Hello and welcome to Fight Town podcast, where we'll be looking at Neilson Boxing, their show this Saturday in Swindon. Rob, it promises to be a good show, doesn't it?
As always,
Yeah,
Neilson put on some cracking little shows, don't they?
yeah.
All year they've been, churning them out one after another, and regular activity for their fighters too. I mean, some of the fighters that we'll go through shortly, they're regular names on the podcast now, aren't they?
Absolutely. We have had the pleasure of dealing with Neilson Boxing this year, myself and Rob, and we've met some very good boxers along the way. Now, this bill is packed with good boxers. I believe there's 11 fights scheduled for this Saturday. Where should we start first, Rob, when we preview this night at Swindon?
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll start at the top of the card with Max Mudway.
Yeah.
I mean, just to go back quickly to your point, I mean, there's a good long list of undefeated fighters that Neilson have got here as well. Many prospects. It is really a prospect show. Some who are, just starting their journey, some who are on the verge of starting to look at titles. So in with some, very tough opponents. So let's start with Max.
Yeah, indeed. And later on the Fight Town podcast, we are going to be speaking with Max and getting the lowdown on his career so far, and also looking forward to next year with Neilson Boxing. Now, this fight, Rob, against Serge and Bomo, there have been a few changes to his opponent, which does happen when at this sort of time of year and at this type of level, when you're sort of 6-0, you do have to sort of try and find opponents. But in
All part of the process.
Yeah, it is part of the process. And we spoke with Carl about it, didn't we, earlier on in earlier podcasts? And it is just part of the process. And Max is coming up against Serge and Bomo, and that's not an easy fight, is it?
No, not at all. Rarely stopped. I would probably consider him a journeyman. Let's be fair. But of his 36 defeats, he's only been stopped 4 times.
Yeah.
And perhaps Max will be, looking to continue his run of KOs as well. He got his first KO in his last fight.
Yeah.
And probably a good monkey to get off his back, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, indeed.
But he'd be looking to continue that. But he's up against a tough man who's been in with very good company at times as well. He's been in with Denzel Bentley now. Look at how Denzel's progressed over the last year to 18 months. Tyler Denny as well, who's picking up belts left, right, and centre at the minute as well. So this guy's no mug, and he's been in with some, with all due respect, higher quality opponents than where Max is at the minute. But he's progressing towards that stage, and it's going to be tough for Max, especially with the changes of opponent. But it is part of a learning process, and it does happen at this stage of their career.
No, absolutely agree, Rob. And just touching, we are going to speak to Max Mudway later on in the show, but just to touch on Serge and Bomo, I have actually had the pleasure of watching the man box at Wembley Arena. I believe that would have been the fight against Jake Goodwin, and to be fair to him, he really does put up a stern fight. He's not there to be brushed over. He looks for the knockout. He's got a real thumping overhand right, which he caught Jake. I think it was Jake Goodwin who he fought. He caught him, quite flat-footed, and he's a powerful guy. So, like you alluded to, Rob, I don't think Max is going to get it all his own way, but he should come through with this one against some boy. But it's going to be a tough night and a great spectacle for the fans watching, isn't it?
Yeah, and he's a local lad as well, and I'm sure we'll go into the chat with him that what his thoughts are on the renaissance of boxing in the southwest as well. It must mean a lot to him to not have to travel. He is becoming a bit of a regular down there, and it must mean a lot to those southwest fighters.
Absolutely. And what a show it promises to be on Saturday, just before we move into December as well, the Christmas period. It's going to be a great night of boxing. Make sure you get your tickets available at Neilson Boxing. Now, Rob, we have got an extensive list of boxers and bouts to go through. Where we go next? We just go down the list.
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
Yeah. So what are we looking at? Is it Conor Gray next?
Yes, yeah. So we previewed Connor's, I believe it was his last fight actually, against Lopez Flores, and another local lad who's learning his trade.
Yeah.
He's actually got an identical record to Max. He's 6-0 with 1 KO, and again very similar to Max. He's going in with a guy who's very rarely stopped in, Jakub Laskowski.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that.
I've been practicing, but he's only been stopped in 10% of his defeats. So this guy is also no mug. He's a regular in the UK as well. So the chances are, if you've been to a show in the last couple of years in the UK, you may have been on it against some of the prospects coming through. So this was an 8-rounder at lightweight as well. So again, another one where it's a good test for Conor. Fully expect him to get through, and a Wiltshire lad as well. So for him to be fighting in Swindon is class.
Yeah, it is good, and he looked very good in his last outing against Christian Lopez Flores. Again, who's no mug in the world of boxing. He's there to go and try and win these fights. And I think with a lot of Neilson Boxing cards, you do find that there are boxers turning up who are looking to try and nick a victory from these prospects, aren't they? And
it's dangerous as well, mate.
They are dangerous
this year. I mean, we've both personally seen fights, on big cards where prospects are going in and not necessarily taking them for granted, but these guys are. They're good. But their record is misleading. And I believe you went to one at your call on a BT show, didn't you, recently?
That's right.
And I can't quite remember the guy's name, but South American fella who came in, and it was a shock, wasn't it? And this does happen, so these guys do need to be careful.
Absolutely, it's going to be a good fight for Conor Gray. I believe that is scheduled for 8 rounds, I believe.
That's right.
Yep. And going down the list then, Rob, looking at the next fight, who have we got?
We've got Bradley Townsend.
Yeah.
Now he's probably the furthest along in his career so far on this card.
Yeah, he's 11-0
some
now,
of the others. Yeah. So he's well underway. He'll be yet to get a stoppage though, and I think that that will definitely be on his mind. He's up at the 6th round marker now as well, and has been at super lightweight, but. Again, I feel like a broken record here. This fella Ramiro Blanco that he's in with is he's horrible.
Yeah.
He's got a very split record. He's got 18 wins and 16 defeats, but heavy-handed. I mean, 16 of his 18 wins have been by cut stoppage. So generally, if he catches you, you're gone. Which is something that Brad needs to definitely be careful of. And on the flip side, when he has lost, he's only been stopped once in his 16 defeats. So
wow,
tough nut to crack.
Yeah, it sounds like a tough nut to crack. Super lightweight division, Rob. What are we talking about? In the UK at the moment, we just spoke about Conor Gray, who fights at super light. We've also got Bradley Townsend with his 11-0 record. Do you reckon it's a chance that, I know they're on the same promoter, that they could cross paths?
I hope so. And we've seen it recently on a few Neilson shows where they're not afraid to put two prospects in together who have got a similar record, and not too many defeats between them, if not unbeaten. I like to see it. I don't think your career's over with. It's just that emphasis on the O, isn't it? And I don't really like it. I think the likes of Floyd Mayweather and fighters like that who have had that O. It's quite glamorous, isn't it? But I don't think it's all that it's cracked up to be. If you lose a fight, you can crack on with your career. So I'm all for it. There's a couple more down the card that I was actually going to discuss a couple of, a similar point, really. If we can move on to the Jordan Flynn fight. I mean, Jordan recently won on the historic, I think we're allowed to say, the Oxford show. It was historic.
Oh, of course it was. Yeah.
It'd been generations, hadn't it?
It had been,
since they'd had a fight down there. So, he's in with another tough guy in Joshua Ocampo. Yeah, I mean, you've probably got his record there in front of you, pal. Another sort of split record with some good wins as well.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, he's won 8, lost 7, and drawn 4, remarkably. With
Yeah, that is odd, isn't it? Considering...
the Colombian Ocampo. Yeah, but it's like we've just gone through, Rob. We've just gone through sort of like the top 3 or 4 on this particular card in Swindon, and that yes, let's not hide between the cracks. They're against not all journeymen, but fighters where they should probably get a victory. But in no means is it going to be easy, or no means is it guaranteed. And you
No.
alluded to it earlier, Rob. We've seen Queensbury cards this year where it should have been a given, and it's been anything but. So Joshua Ocampo, like you just said, he's not going in there to lose, is he? He's going to go in there to try and beat Flynn, isn't he?
Well, another case of when he lands, he hurts people. I mean, 3/4 of his wins have been by KO. So probably a lesser version of Blanco, really. Obviously, Blanco's been more active, but yeah, if you've got a 75% KO record in your wins, that's dangerous.
Yeah, and Jordan Flynn, as we've seen before, at super featherweight. I mean, he is a class act. He does bring that sort of sleek style to his boxing, doesn't he? And he's
great value on Instagram as well. If you haven't got him,
really?
He posts a lot of his workouts and his day-to-day activities on there, and it's quite interesting actually. And he's got quite a big following down there.
That's absolutely brilliant. Fight Town podcast listeners, if you want to check out a lot of Neilson Boxing, their boxers, they are on Instagram, and it's great fun, isn't it? They do a lot of promos of their fights, and you can actually see their styles and how they fight beforehand as well. And Jordan Flynn is someone you certainly want to watch box down in Swindon on Saturday night. Now, Shabir Hadri, we have spoken to him on the show. What a lovely bloke he was.
He really was. Yeah,
really down to earth. I think he had just finished his shift. I think he's a chef to some degree. And he's fighting at the super featherweight, the same as Jordan Flynn.
Exactly.
He's 2-0. I mean, you're looking at Neilson Boxing for next year, and there could be some really big nights, couldn't there? With these boxers and prospects coming through.
I think this is something that, when we sit down with Neilson at the end of a year and maybe do some sort of review show, that we can put this to them.
Yeah,
we can stick it on them, because I definitely think there's scope for these fights. Maybe build it a little bit, but a lot of them are based down in the southwest, or nearer York Hall, which seems to be the 2 hubs they have at the minute. But I'm all for it, mate.
Yeah, and Shabir Hadri scored a fantastic knockout victory in his last fight. He really did. He's really starting to show that he is a very exciting boxer to watch. And I know Mark and Jared from Neilson Boxing, and of course Carl, speak very highly of him, and they're very excited about Shabir Hadri. He's only 2-0 at the moment, so he's very fresh. He's learning the trade, and he's in against Tatenda Mangombe.
Well done.
There we go. Look at that pronunciation. Who, again, he's not a journeyman by any stretch of the imagination. No. He has lost 4 fights. However, he's still going to feel that he can get his boxing career back on track. He's only 26. So, again, it's not going to be an easy fight for Hadri, is it?
No, I mean, they haven't even had 10 fights between them. So, that will be very interesting. Obviously, keep an eye out for Shabir's walk-on as well.
Oh, yes, because I think he has the traditional Afghan
dress.
Dress. Yeah. It's very good. I mean, talking of that, later on Fight Town podcast listeners, we are going to be speaking to Lewis Roberts ahead of his fight against Stephen Maguire, which we're going to come on to shortly. And he certainly knows how to make an entrance, doesn't he, Rob?
Yeah,
I'm not
just
sure if you've seen
Go
that. Yeah,
go on, tell them all about it.
Well, it involves Mexican headdress, dresses, and the poncho. Along with the music as well. It's absolutely amazing. But we shall come on to Lewis Roberts later on in the Fight Town podcast. Next fight, Brad Ingram. I'm not sure if we've watched him fight before, but he's up against Paul Scaife at welterweight, and we know what Paul Scaife brings. He has again got a losing record. However, he's a tough nut. Yeah,
he's only been stopped twice, and he's had 25 fights. So there's proof in that. He was actually one of the opponents on the Oxford show recently as well. So
Yeah,
he's
that's right.
he's very, very active. I mean, he's had so many fights. I'm not sure exactly, but he's had a lot of his career this year.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, rarely stopped. Brad's an interesting one. This is actually his fourth fight in the last 12 months at Regent Circus in Swindon. So a bit
Oh
of
wow.
home from home, really.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm sure he'll be extremely comfortable going in against Paul, and also seeking his first KO as well, just to mention.
Yeah, and we do talk about, obviously when we do these podcasts, we do talk about KOs and what they bring to the
Yeah,
professional game, and that they are important, aren't they? But in these early stages when boxers are 3-0 and they're fighting, boxers like Paul Scaife, it's a case of getting in there and getting the rounds in, and getting under the lights, isn't it? And sort of
it is to an
learning
extent.
learning the
Yeah,
craft.
it is. It is. But I mean, it can't do any harm, getting a few stoppages, because at the end of the day, at this sort of level, there's a lot of reliance on ticket selling, and I think that if you're known as a heavy hitter, and there's a chance there that you're going to take the guy out of there, naturally you'll sell more tickets as well.
Absolutely agree with you, Rob. No doubt in that in my mind. It's exciting, and paying punters who go to watch these professional bouts, ultimately they want to see these knockouts. Obviously, all boxers being safe and well, but they want to see some action. So it's
Yeah, yeah.
you're not wrong in saying that. They will certainly see some action with Lewis Roberts. He fights against Stephen Maguire. We mentioned him earlier. What a fantastic boxer Lewis Roberts is to watch. If you're going to have a ring walk like that with the Mexican gear on, you've got to back it up, haven't you? And
You don't half put pressure on yourself, to be fair, with
I
that.
know.
And hey, fair play to him.
Yeah, and he doesn't half put a show on. He's fighting against Steve Livewire Maguire, who I'm
Love
sure,
that.
yeah, I'm sure we've seen him fight in Liverpool,
We did.
and we
Yeah.
know what he brings. It's extremely hard to get that guy out of the ring. He fought a very competitive Braithwaite, Marcel
Marcel,
Braithwaite,
yeah.
who I was
Yeah.
extremely impressed with. And some of the body shots he took from Marcel Braithwaite in Liverpool were,
Horrible.
well, yes, some of the worst I've seen in a boxing ring. And he just smiled back at him. So it gives you an idea, Lewis Roberts, if you're listening, I'm sure you'll listen back, what you're up against here with Stephen Maguire. He's not going to have it all his own way, is he?
Coach Alex.
Yeah, we go, Coach Alex. There we go. I'll get my
Yeah.
whistle and my shirt on, and
I believe Steve Maguire actually fought recently at York Hall as well, against George Ellis, which we previewed and did the
yes,
presser for a few
and
weeks
that was
back.
George Ellis's debut, wasn't it?
I believe so. Yeah, and he was absolutely buzzing for that, wasn't he?
Yeah, and
So
it's
regular with Neilson.
absolutely, it's quite funny you mentioned George Ellis, because there's been some fantastic, what shall I call it, beef needle.
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah,
what you want to call it, between himself and, I'm not going to remember the boxer's name, but he's in the same weight category and he boxes with Neilson Boxing. We
yeah.
interviewed him.
We'll go back and find that and put that out.
We will, yeah, but it's been interesting because both boxers, George Ellis and I'll get the boxer's name in a moment. They're both very sort of early on in their
Raw, yeah,
careers,
yeah.
raw, and they both want this fight to happen. So it's very interesting, and it's a credit to Neilson Boxing and what they're doing there, isn't it? Because they're built.
Absolutely.
I'm not being funny. When we do look down these lists, sometimes you can see boxers are 3-0 and 2-0, but they are really building these fighters into people who are going to cross paths, aren't they? With
Yeah, yeah, and there's so many shows that they're putting out, and no doubt next year will be no different, if more shows. And these lads are going to have plenty of opportunities to get out in places like Regent Circus, York Hall, maybe further afield. They put on that fantastic show in Liverpool, so yeah, great opportunities for prospects up and coming.
Yeah, indeed. And let's move down the middleweight contest. 6 rounds of boxing with Billy Stanbury and Vasif Maimdov. I'm not sure we've seen, again, Vasif Maimdov before boxing at the York Hall. But Billy Stanbury, what have we seen about him, Rob? What do you like about the
And
Southpaw?
another local lad, who's learning his trade, to be honest. He has got a stoppage on his record, and I think something will give on in this one, because Vasif doesn't seem to be a guy that gets stopped either. There seems to be a trend with these opponents that they don't get stopped a lot. I think he's only been stopped twice in 28 defeats or something like that. So
Yeah.
good opportunity for Billy. He's based in Devon, and with respect to that area, there's very little boxing or high profile boxing that goes on down there. So
Yeah.
for him to, find himself with Neilson on a relatively local show, it's not a million miles for him to get up to Swindon. I love it. I absolutely love it. And again, we'll go into it with Lewis shortly. But talking of Devon, we also have a 6-round welterweight contest between Konstantin Ursu
Yes.
and Fons Alexander. I love this fight. I
I
love
do
stuff
as
like
well.
this.
I do.
Go on, mate. Go on.
It's Konstantin Ursu at welterweight. We know what he brings. He's a great prospect, but Fons Alexander. We talk about boxers and we talk about journeyman. He's certainly someone who's been around, let's say, but not
Mate, it's incredible.
I know,
incredible.
Not to take the shine off of Konstantin Ursu, just to say,
No.
he has a TKO, a KO on his record in those 6 fights, and he's again a great southpaw to watch. But yeah, touching on Fons Alexander, I mean, hats off to him. Let's just say that
he's approaching nearly 150 fights. It's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. And like I say, he's about 145, 146 fights. He's only been stopped 5 times. What a tough bastard! That is incredible. Honestly, excuse my French, but it's just that those fighters are what the bread and butter of that level of boxing, aren't they? And I can't praise it enough. But saying that, Konstantin, he's the home fighter. Believe it or not, he's a Moldovan residing in Plymouth, which is a rarity, I believe.
There we go. There you have it.
So yeah, I mean, obviously, aside from Fonz's record, Konstantin will definitely be looking to progress and get to 7-0 as quick as he can and move on early next year.
Exactly. Now, Rob, there are 2 more fights to preview before we have a chat with Max Mudway and of course Roberts as well. We're going to get them both on the Fight Town podcast coming up next. Now, interesting one, Elizabeth Ashoba has just signed with Neilson Boxing. I believe she is Nigerian from birth, and she's 2-0. 2 KOs, super bantam. I mean, what a prospect Neilson Boxing have signed.
Fresh off the Commonwealth Games as well.
Amazing.
I went to the Commonwealths myself this year, and it was mega. It was proper good. To go and watch that elite amateur level.
I remember
boxing.
you going to that. And
she got a silver, which is amazing. So for Neilson to snap her up, it is class, and I like seeing this level of boxing, the women getting snapped up as well. I really do, because it's not all about the glitz and glamour of being on Sky all the time. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And yeah, she'll be a credit to the stable. I have no doubt.
I do agree with you. And it might be an idea for ourselves and Fight Town podcast listeners to get Elizabeth on the show.
Yes,
with Mark as well, and we can have a good chat with them and find out, about her background and about fighting in those Commonwealth Games. Because, like you said, Rob, that is, it's fantastic to watch.
So
isn't
good,
it?
mate. Honestly,
yeah. So, people going down to Swindon on Saturday, look out for Elizabeth Ashoba. She is fighting. It's her 3rd fight, but her first fight with Neilson Boxing. So it's it'll be good for her to get under the lights with Mark and his crew and see what she can do. Well, we know what she can do, but it'd be great to see her nurtured by Neilson Boxing. So watch that space with Elizabeth Ashoba in the super bantam. And then we've also got at the bottom of the bill Bradley O'Connor versus Ricky Leach. Now we know this has been topsy-turvy. There's been a few changes, hasn't there, to the opponent. Ricky Leach comes in late. And it's Bradley O'Connor's 2nd fight. It's going to be a tough one for him, isn't it?
Yeah, so early, and it's hard. He's had his debut, and that was we've seen this year, haven't we? There's been fighters who've lost their debuts, so he's got that out of the way.
Absolutely,
and he's fresh, he's ready to go, and I think he'll be really active next year as well. So
I think so.
And the 3rd Brad on the card.
Oh yeah,
3 Bradleys.
3 Bradleys on the card. There we go. Right, Fight Town. Go on.
No, I was just going to say, if you haven't snapped up your tickets and you're close, get yourself down there and enjoy a good night of boxing. You don't get 11 fights on many cards.
Precisely that. And with Neilson Boxing, Fight Town podcast listeners, you know what you're going to get. You're going to get a great night of boxing. Their events always look fantastic, which makes a spectacle of the evening, doesn't it, Rob? And it's
Hey,
You
we've
know,
been there. We've seen it for ourselves. It's it's very easy for people to sell a product that they've never seen or
indeed.
experienced. But we've been down there. You've been to a few at your call as well, and it's class. It's class, guys. Honestly, you get yourself down there.
Indeed, it is. Now, Rob, we are going to move on in the Fight to Town podcast, and we are going to speak with Max Mudway. Let's go.
Yes.
Right, Fight to Town podcast listeners, we now have the second part of the podcast where we're going to be talking to Max Mudway, who's fighting on Saturday night. Max, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
Yeah, not so bad, mate. Thank you very much for having me on. I appreciate it.
No problem at all. And Rob is still here with us. Rob, we're looking forward to this fight, aren't we? Have you got any questions to ask Max before we fire away?
Yeah, absolutely. Max, headlining this weekend. How are you feeling, pal?
Mate, absolutely buzzing. I think this is the third show that I've headlined at the Neilsons.
Yeah.
Yeah, mate, I can't wait to go, to be honest. This has been a long, hard camp. Unfortunately, the opponents changed and a few different variables have changed for it, but the goal still remains the same, and I'm looking forward to putting on a great show for my fans.
Fantastic. And it's going to be a big night in Swindon, as we all know, as we're coming towards the end of the year, Max. To give people an idea what it's like fighting in Mecca in Swindon, and you know what the atmosphere is like in there.
Oh, mate, well, as a lot of people all know, I always draw an amazing crowd, a huge crowd, and this crowd's probably going to be the biggest crowd of my professional career so far.
Wow.
They are nutty, crazy, and just overall just an amazing crowd, to be fair. Just the same as I am with my entrances, my music, my helmets. So I mean, it's all about us putting on the entertainment for the fans, and everyone just enjoys it every time. So that's why they all want to come out and support me, you know.
Fantastic.
Absolutely, Max. And you know, your last outing against Rick Sarkis, as we know with him, you know, he's a tough fighter, and I mean, you pretty much went in there and blew him away, didn't you? How pleased was you with that KO victory?
Yeah, man. I mean, we didn't plan for it obviously to happen that quick, as fights never really do. But the fact that we got in there and got him out of there early was even better. Like something my trainer always says, you get paid the same amount as you do for one round as you do for 4, 6, or 10.
Yeah.
So if it happens early, it happens early. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, your coach John in the build up to this has been really sort of pushing the next step up. Really, obviously going into next year. You know, God willing, you get past Surge at the weekend. Will you be looking towards title fights next? Do you think?
100%, mate. Well, as we know, I was obviously supposed to be fighting for the English title eliminator this weekend, which has obviously gone a bit pear shaped. But that fight will now be postponed until the new year. Hopefully, I can't say too much, but on a local show in March.
Yeah.
But ideally, I mean, I'm staying ready, mate. I mean, too many times after my fights have I just sort of allowed myself to sort of go off the boil a little bit and put on weight and maybe go back to do a little bit of partying. But trust me when I say that I'm going to be ready for anything now. Come the new year, any opportunity that comes my way, I'm going to be ready for it. And I want to see myself on Sky Sports or another big TV brand by the end, well, probably within the next 6 months, to be honest.
Brilliant.
That's what I see for myself.
No, that's good, and it's just going to add to the buzz in the gym as well, isn't it? Obviously, there's plenty of belts flowing around at the minute in the gym, and that must add to your motivation on a daily basis.
100%, mate. My boy Riddy, he's done so well in his career. So it'd be nice to just give my trainer, who I've been with for 14 years, another few belts to go along with it. You know.
Yeah, superb.
I know the southern area welterweight belt is currently vacant, so I would love to get a fight on for that like February time if that's possible. Hopefully on the Sky Sports show or something like that.
All sounds it sounds very promising, Max. But you've touched a couple of times, and we are going to go into it on weight. And how's that been for you in terms of, obviously you have to mix and match it with opponents, but you have fought a couple of different weights, haven't you, over your fights?
Yeah. So
if you just give listeners an idea of how that's come around, or is it just been circumstantial?
Circumstantial, really. I mean, the first few fights you have as a professional, or we call learning fights. You fight like catch weights, or you fight at like sort of comfortable weights that you walk around at.
Yeah.
But what you've got to learn as you go through and as you step up through the levels is that the heavier you fight, the heavier opponents you fight, the more of a challenge it's going to be. You know.
Yeah.
I have always been a welterweight. Like that's 66 kg or 147 to people that work in pounds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this last fight was a welter, and this fight was supposed to be a welter as well. And that's just my weight, to be honest, mate. I'm powerful, I'm fast, and I can punch with both hands at welterweight. So my business lies at welterweight. You're only ever going to see me floating between welter and super welter for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, you mentioned about your speed and your power there. Do you feel the difference when you're between sort of welter, super welter? Is there a big difference in how you feel?
I mean, somewhat, yeah, not massively, but I've always said that like as soon as you get past like a certain weight, you do start feeling quite sluggish and your movement just feels a lot less snappy, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how I just know that after being there now, getting there, losing the weight, fighting at that weight, I know where I'm supposed to be and I know where I'm going to be staying.
Yeah, the optimum. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Brilliant.
Fantastic, Max. And just earlier on in the Fight Town podcast, Max, we was previewing the show this Saturday in Swindon, and I had a lot to say about your opponent, Serge Ambomo. I have seen him fight at Wembley Arena, I believe it was, on a Queensbury show, and it's fair to say he's one tough bastard. And I'm right behind you on this. I think you're going to get the victory, but it's. I'm not sure how much you know about him, but he certainly brings the fight. That's for sure.
100%, mate. But that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah,
I'd rather step in there against someone who's going to bring the fight and make it a good challenge for me and bring out the best in me. I'm gone are the days where I want to fight against someone who throws a punch around and stands there just waiting for a paycheck. The fact that he's come in and the fact that he's coming to have a scrap means all the better for me, and he's going to feel it. He's going to feel every last minute of the nine weeks I've been spending sacrificing and putting my graft in and putting my family's graft through.
Yeah,
He's about to feel it all, mate, and everyone's going to see that on the night.
Fantastic, Max. You've sold the fight to me, and I'm sure you've sold the fight to the Fight Town podcast.
Well, there's still tickets left, so if anyone else wants to buy it,
good plug.
Now listen, Fight Town podcast, as you've heard it yourself from Max Mudway, he means business at the tail end of this year. Next year is going to be an extremely exciting year for Max. So watch this space, follow him on his social media platforms. Max, it's been a pleasure having you on. All the best for Saturday night. Any last comments to your fans before we go off?
My fans, just bring the noise. That's all I'm going to say. And all else I'm going to say is the Spartans prepare for glory.
Love that.
And also,
Absolutely
sorry, mate. I just want to thank all my sponsors for all their help, continuous help throughout my camps. But two of my main sponsors, the Goodness Kitchen and HGV Drivers, who have been helping me out daily and monthly, and recently have actually been subsidising, so I could actually focus on my training for the last 4 weeks and not work at all. So thank you very much, guys.
That's fantastic news there, Max. Now, Fight Town podcast listeners, we are moving on. We're going to speak with Lewis Roberts. Let's go. Right, Fight Town podcast listeners, we just spoke with Max Mudway, who is fighting this Saturday in Swindon. Now we're lucky enough to have Lewis Roberts on the podcast. Lewis, welcome to Fight Town podcast. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Yeah, it's absolutely great to have you on. Rob, any questions we got for Lewis before we get underway?
Yeah, absolutely. Lewis, obviously part of another show down in that neck of the woods. You must be buzzing to be, obviously you're a local. Neilson are putting on some great shows down there, and you're becoming a bit of a regular down there as well, pal. How does that feel?
Yeah, it's great. It's a great opportunity to have with being Neilson's Boxing local fighter, if you want to call me that.
Yeah,
and it's good to be getting on their shows regularly.
Yeah, it's great, and what they're doing for the sport down there as well, because it's been a bit of a hidden gem for a while, hasn't it? And recently they put on the first show at Oxford for a couple of generations. So it's fantastic that you're getting your pro career underway down there, and they're there to see it through.
Definitely, yeah. I feel like I'm sort of growing with Neilson Boxing now.
Definitely.
Absolutely fantastic. And Lewis, it's your first 6-rounder fight. Quote me if I'm wrong. I could be wrong there, but I believe
No,
it's your,
that's correct.
it's your first 6-rounder fight. You're touted as sort of a featherweight, but do you float between super bantam and feather?
Yeah, we sort of started at feather. We're making that a bit easy. So
Yeah.
we dropped down to super bantam now, and that's what we're going to stick at and look at for the future. Staying down at that weight now.
Yeah, and is that what you've looked at with yourself and your team? Have you looked at a pathway for that, or is it still a case at the moment of just getting the fights in and sort of learning the trade, the sort of pro trade?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, over the next few fights, that'll be a few more step ups, and then we'll be looking beyond the horizon. Then we're going to take and where we're going to go with it.
Absolutely fantastic. Now you're fighting Steve Live Wire Maguire. Myself and Rob have had the pleasure of watching him box in Liverpool against a certain Marcel Braithwaite. And you know, we were talking earlier on the podcast, Lewis, about Steve. You know, he's a hard nut to crack, isn't he?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he's a real tough man.
And if you and your team had a chance to have a look at him, and do you know how you're sort of going to play it on Saturday night?
We do. Yeah, we had a bit of a late change of opponent, so but we're more than prepared for him. More than prepared.
Brilliant.
Absolutely
Brilliant. Obviously, Lewis, you got to 4-0 very quickly. You're still very young in the boxing game as well. I'm sure you won't mind me saying. How quickly do you want to move? Because you know, Neilson, they're going to have a lot of shows next year as they have this year. Are you looking to you know, do a particular amount of fights next year, or get to a certain level? You know, what's your sort of 12 to 18 month plan?
In the next 12 months, I want to be fighting it internationally if I can.
Yeah,
but as you said, I'm still real young in the boxing game. I'm in no rush at all to be rushing any of these fights. I've got plenty of time behind me.
Yeah,
we'll
absolutely.
just sort of take it as it comes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Lewis, we was talking to Max just a minute ago, and he was saying, you know, he brings this raucous crowd. He comes out with a sort of gladiator's helmet on, you know, it's you've got to talk to us about your ring walk, because it's just absolutely sensational, is it? Give the people an idea of what, you know, how that all comes about.
It all come about from when I first started in my amateur career. We brought the name Al Gordito in, which means the fat one in Mexican. And that comes about from weighing in too heavy at an amateur fight. 11, 12. It weren't a lot. It was a kilo or something like that. But I was too heavy, and ever since then, I had the nickname Chubsy, and that stuck for 10 years or so. And then we looked at the pro career, and I was going in sparring British contenders when I was 13, 14, taking days off school, go and do that, like you would see a young Canelo or something. Yeah, and I had that sort of Mexican style back then, so we just sort of mixed it in with that. We come up with Al Gordito, and now we have all the sombreros. And a little mariachi band comes Saturday.
Man, I love it. I absolutely love
it. And Lewis, just touching on that, you know, I've seen your southpaw style. You've got a beautiful boxing stance, you know, like you said, that sort of Mexican style. And is that something you had to work on, or did it just come naturally for you?
Everything come naturally for me. I can mix up my style. I can do anything.
Yeah.
Any man.
Yeah, fantastic. And we've seen this year on Neilson Boxing a lot of very decent southpaws in Tommy Jacobs, Bo Reynolds, and even Johnny Ward. Have you seen a lot of those guys in and around Neilson Boxing as well?
Yeah. I watched Johnny Ward when he last fought at the Mecca.
Yeah.
I didn't catch his last fight, but I watched him then, and I watched Tommy Jacobs at York Hall. In one of Mark's first shows there.
Great characters.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
And like we say with Neilson Boxing, they really are bringing him through some great names, and it must be exciting for you to be with Neilson Boxing as well, and especially fighting in Swindon, where they seem to put on these fantastic shows. It's going to be exciting for the fans, isn't it? Is there anything you want to say to your fans or Fight Town podcast listeners going to the fight on Saturday?
Just thank you very much for all the support you bring, and keep bringing that raw. We like the raw.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Listen, Lewis, all the best on Saturday night. Thanks for joining us on the podcast.
No problem.
Super, Lewis.
And we'll catch you again soon as well. But
sure.
Fight Town podcast listeners, that is the preview of the show on Saturday night with Neilson Boxing. It's going to be a fantastic night of boxing, and we shall see you there. Take care.
Thank you very much.